This legend played 152 first grade games with Parramatta and a further 16 games with the English club Leeds. Of course, represented City, New South Wales and Australia, widely regarded as one of the game's greatest ever wingers. Been named in the top 25 New South Wales Origin players of all time and the top 100 Australian players in rugby league history. It is an absolute pleasure to have Eric Grothe Senior here with the Cumberland Pro. Thank you for having us, Eric.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. Now, you are commonly known, let's start off with the nickname Guru. How did that nickname come about?
Well, the short version is when I was coming up through the grades, I was playing a little bit of first grade, telegraph. Actually, there was a fella that came to the training through Jack Gibson, and he was a transcendental meditation guru. And Jack, through all his wisdom, thought that that might work with some of the players and stuff like that. So he had a bit of a talk, and me, Peter Wynn, David Lydiard, someone else I can't remember, four of us thought we'd try this transcendental meditation. So we had to go to Sydney and give the guru some fruit and some a tea towel of some sort. It was just the way they do things, and we did it for about 3 weeks, and then the Telegraph got hold of it that we were doing it, came to one of the training sessions and said, can we get you to sit in the middle of the field with your legs crossed? And then it was posted the next day on the Telegraph on the back page. And as soon as I got the training that afternoon, they said, oh, the guru, is it? The guru. So it just stuck from that.
Did it help you playing at all?
It did. I thought it was one of the best things I'd ever done.
Really? How did it help you, like on the field or just?
Well, just relax. I mean, I used to get fairly nervous before a game, as most people do. But sometimes it overtook, and it just found it very in all walks of life. It was just a great, you soothe yourself, and you just everything will be a little bit clearer.
Yeah, well, you're still the guru today. Let's start at the beginning of your grade career. You came into grade in 1978. You had a huge season of the under-23s, and you were named Club Rookie of the Year. Looking back, what sort of ambitions did you have when you started in your first season? What sort of footballer did you want to be?
That's a good question. I didn't have any clear thoughts on that. I just wanted to be part of play the game, play the footy game. And as it worked out, it just all fell into place anyway. But yeah, I remember being, I had a really good year. I came up with Steve Ella. We were both called up at the same time. In '77 we played, we sat on the bench for the under-23s as they were going through the semi-finals and stuff. And we played a couple of games there were some injuries, and then that year after '78, it was just it all fell into place, and to be named Rookie of the Year, I remember feeling very proud of that, and that was the real kickstart for me that got me thinking seriously about where I was.
You mentioned Steve Ella. You both came from East Mount Pritchard. We hear a lot of stories about him as a player. What was his talent like? What do you remember about him as a player?
Amazing. Just playing junior football with him at Mount Pritchard, and the way that he stepped and his strength, and then in '78, that year, he had a bad knee injury, and it was one of the worst knee injuries that they'd had, that the doctors had seen. He tore every ligament, and the bones come away from each other, all that sort of stuff. And his rehabilitation was for about 2 years. He was just never the same for that 2 years. But in that period of time, he had some infections in the hospital, and he lost a lot of weight, and he was never the same. Leading up to that, he was about 85, 90 kilo, and he could run like the wind, and he could step just very, very quickly on the spot. He lost a lot of weight, and his stature sort of got a fair bit smaller, and he would have been a Wally Lewis in regards to taking the game over and in his ability and stuff like that. But in saying that, he was just great, a fantastic player anyway, regardless. But he just lost that little bit of weight and strength, and he had to change the way he played a little bit because of that.
Back to your first grade career, you made your debut in 1979. What do you remember about your first game?
I remember pretty clearly. We played Cronulla in a trial match over at Shark Park, whatever it was called then.
It's had 40 names apparently.
We played trial match. They beat us 18-0. I remember the kick. I remember just before the kick-off seeing the Sorensen brothers lining up and Steve Rogers, and I thought, I used to swap their footy cards,
Yeah.
and just to play up against them, and they're big guys, it just was it really just shocked me with where I was at that point. But yeah, I had a fairly good game, and it was they beat us 18-0. That's pretty big in those days. But it was just a great experience.
You talk about looking in awe of the players who stand across from you. You start finding your feet a little bit 79 and 80. When did you feel that you had made it as a first grader? When did you feel that maybe you belonged on this stage?
Well, yeah, pretty much after 81, when we won the grand final. I thought, the 81 season, we won the pre-season cup against these. And I'd broken my arm in that, and I was out for about 7-8 weeks. And I thought I'd be finding my way coming through the 23s or reserve grade, but Jack Gibson decided to throw me straight back into first grade, and I thought, well, he's feeling pretty good about me, so I should feel pretty good about myself. So that was a change for me mentally.
You say you only felt as a regular first grader in 81. In 81, you're playing Origin. You featured in a couple of massive Origin moments. It's interesting that only at the end of 81 that you really felt that you belonged.
Yeah, it was, well, that all unfolded, and it just took me a while to sort of feel comfortable with all that. But I remember earlier, a couple of years before that Terry Fernley asked me, was I ready for first grade? I think it was at 78, and I flatly said no. I just don't feel like I'm ready for it. But as it just all unfolded, and the players that we were playing with, Steve Bellett and all those sort of guys, it just made me feel more confident.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about hindsight a little bit. We'll talk about your career, but hindsight of Origin, obviously it's massive now, but when you played Origin in 81, it was still very much in its infancy. What were the impact that Origin had on you even back then?
Yeah, it was enormous. The 81 game that we played was only the one game. We got together, I think, we played on the Tuesday, we played on the Sunday, got together on the Monday morning, the team was picked, and we flew up and we pretty much had a bit of a drink that night, and in the meantime, the Queensland State of Origin was starting to, they knew what they wanted, and they wanted to beat us, and when I got out onto the field and played the game, and when I got slapped by, what's his name, Chris Close, when he bitch slapped me, then at that point I knew these guys really think this is serious, and it just changed the whole attitude. And then 82 I didn't play, 83, 84 it just became a monster.
It's so interesting that Origin is tried in different sort of formats, and they cannot replicate the passion that you find in rugby league. What is it about rugby league state of origin?
Yeah, mate versus mate thing, and the Queensland team just getting beaten by New South Wales all those times, leading up to 80, 81. And it's just this, it's really hard to explain. It's just that, it just grew from that for whatever reasons. It's just the mate versus mate thing. They had a shot of Brett Kenny and Wally Lewis looking at each other, and the shield was in between them, and they're looking at each other. They were good mates, and then all of a sudden they wanted to rip each other's heads off.
That's not on the field, they weren't. Now, 81, of course, first ever premiership. Tell us about that moment. Tell us about that time, that game. What do you remember?
It was just amazing. I remember feeling on the bus on the way out to the game how calm it was in the bus, and I thought there was a great feeling here. And the game didn't go our way. It was the try that Tommy Rudonica scored in the second half as we came out. I just had this feeling. I knew that we were all calm and we were ready. It was like it was just going to play out anyway. And as the game went on, we just got better and better. And the feeling pretty much straight after when Brett Kenny scored that try down the sideline, and that sort of sealed it for us. I just had this explosion of euphoria and thought, how good is this? And saw the crowd, and then the feeling afterwards, and getting on the bus, and then driving to Parramatta. It was just amazing. It was just a sea of people. It was just real rock star stuff. It was just, and we had to get off and get onto this back of a truck that was a stage, and then they introduced us to the crowd, and that was amazing. Everyone was just mad, and then it was just people everywhere. We had to walk, and we had to hold hands pretty much, all of us walking the line to get through to the auditorium and stuff like that. And, the people in the auditorium, and then Jack said those famous words, "Ding dong, the witch is dead." what are you talking about? And then I didn't realise until a couple of weeks later what that all meant. So, but just the feeling, just the area and the support that we had just came out. It was just fantastic.
And we think back to those years, we think Sterling, we think Kenny, obviously yourself, Cronin, Ella. Do we look back with rose-coloured glasses? Do we have a bit of nostalgia about us, or were we really that amazing?
Yeah, no, well, those players you've mentioned, I mean, they were amazing. It wasn't that often that they had an off game, and if, say, Sterling never had an off game, but if he had an off game, Brett Kenny had a great game. If he had an off game, Mick Cronin had a great game. And Steve Ella, blah, blah, blah. It just went down the line. And our forward pack was uncompromising. It was just a, uncompromising pack that Jack Gibson had got together, and he knew what type of player he wanted. But everyone just got on, and that derives from, obviously we had a lot of success, but the feeling within the joint was just that we all wanted to stay together and stick together.
Now, you were in 5 grand finals, you won 4 of them, which is just a ridiculous achievement. Do all grand finals feel as good as that first one, or was that first one have a special place?
Yeah, the first one had a special place, of course it was the first one, obviously, and it just meant so much to the area. In 82, 83 and 86 was, yeah, they were just as amazing afterwards at the Leagues Club, and everyone's just crazy for it. And we just wanted more of that to happen, and it was all just falling into place. But yeah, they all felt the same, but the special one was obviously the first one.
Now, during the Parramatta years, you spent an off-season playing in England. How do you compare those 2 club football experiences, England and Australia?
Completely different. Well, playing in the cold, obviously, and the lush grounds over there, the grasses were really thick, and the grounds were fairly spongy. So, and it was a bit slower because of that. But it was just at that period of time, especially from the 82 Kangaroos and stuff, where we were a much better individual players than they were for whatever reasons, and it just went through that period of time, the 80s, that they struggled to stay with us. And yeah, it was the game was slower because of that. When we played them over there, we were used to playing quicker games and playing the ball quicker and all that sort of stuff. So they were pretty much just sort of hitting it up in the middle. That was the biggest part for me, was the day was slower in the middle. That was really noticeable, especially in the 82 Kangaroos when we went over there. Our forwards was just so much faster than theirs. But there was a definite difference in the games because of I think more so because of the weather and the sponginess of the grounds.